Now, as far as the whole Trump being a racist, and all, I mean, from my perspective, of me being as a Black American and as a Muslim as well, Trump is not the first racist president we've had. We've had quite a few of them. There are many non-Muslims, who feel just as passionately about what's happening in Palestine as Muslims do. Some of them are more like two-state solutions, some are one-state solutions, some are like get rid of Israel completely. Yeah, there's a spectrum of people who are against Israel, and that has never, ever, ever been like this
Mm.
in the United States, and I believe throughout much of the world now. The emperor has no clothes in them. The Democratic Party, outwardly and aggressively promotes immoral and un-Islamic behavior. So that alone should be enough for Muslims not to support them. I don't like the fact that I'm getting desensitized to seeing dead babies. I mean, that's really a reality I have to accept now, that I'm starting to get desensitized to seeing dead Muslim children because I've seen this so much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Muslim Podcaster Show. I'm your host Majid, and today I'm joined by the host of the Islamic History Podcast, brother Muttaqi Ismail. Assalamu alaikum, bro, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Brother Majid. Happy to be here. Always ready to join you and talk a lot of stuff. So,
Mashallah, mashallah. How's everything? Everything's good?
alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Family's doing well, work is doing well. Country, I don't know, doing as well as it can do for now, I suppose. But
Y-
alhamdulillah, everything's
Yes,
doing good. Podcast is doing good, alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. Now, of course, of course. I know you've delved into some interviews recently, mashallah. Hopefully keep up the great work. I'm
Alhamdulillah, I'll try to. It's not easy finding guests, but it's not the main thing that I want to do, since I'm doing some videos, some personal commentary, and of course historical stuff that I always do. So,
But cool, inshallah khair.
mm,
Let's kick on with the main topic then, bro.
okay, here
So
we go.
yeah, look, at the end of the day, big things are going on in the US at the moment with the elections. And I
Mm,
thought, you know what, I wanna speak to someone about what's happening there. And obviously no one better than yourself. Obviously you're in the States. And yeah, it's I want to get into it in terms of some bizarre things that have been happening where you have the Democrats who generally tend to have always appealed to the sort of Arab and the Muslim community, whilst this time, if it feels like they haven't done so much, and at the same time, then you have Trump, for example, making an extra effort in going and visiting Muslims and Arabs. Do you know what I mean? And then
yeah.
I saw this weird picture where there was this Muslim sister with the hijab and everything, and she was wearing a T-shirt where it said, Arabs for Trump. So, it was kind of confusing. But look, at the end of the day, obviously you're there. What's the noise on the ground? What's happening?
Well, I do believe it's going to be a rough split between um, those who will stick with the Democratic Party, which I find bizarre, and those who are going to go for Jill Stein and the Green Party. The Green Party, as far as, well, first of all, the presidential nominee for the Green Party, which is a third party, rarely gets over 2% of the vote. They've been running in presidential elections for years, and they rarely get more than 1 or 2% of the vote. This time, however, with what's happening in Israel, there is they do pose a significant threat to take away from the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party's nominee, which is, of course, current Vice President Kamala Harris. There is a very strong threat for Jill Stein to take Muslim votes away from Kamala Harris. Part of the reason is that Jill Stein, the Green Party's presidential nominee, her vice president is a Muslim, Butch Ware. He is he is a Muslim, and he's actually a fairly popular Muslim. My phone's going off here. I'm turning this off. But he's a very popular Muslim. He has written books about Islam. Um, I don't know if he would consider himself a scholar or not, but he has studied Islam extensively overseas. He, as far as the Salafi Sufi dichotomy, he probably leans more towards the Sufi side. I think he definitely leans more towards Sufi side, but still, he is, as far as I know him, he's a practicing Muslim. I don't agree with everything he says, but still, there's no way I'm going to vote for a non-Muslim over a Muslim. I mean, there's no way for that. I'll definitely, even if I don't agree with everything he says, so long as he's outwardly professing his Islam, and he's known to have done good works within the Muslim community. And he's definitely someone I will support, even as vice president. Now, of course, the Green Party has almost no chance of winning. We know that. The Democrats and the Republicans still have a lock on it. The thing is to try to break that dichotomy between the Democrats and the Republicans. And the first time I've heard of this plan was actually with I think the Thinking Muslim podcast. I can't remember the brother's name, but he had someone else from there. I can't remember. A very popular geopolitical guy. I think he's based out of the UK too. He was discussing, the name escapes me right now, but I'll remember in a moment. He mentioned how
I think it's Sami Hamdan, right?
Sami Hamdan, that's it. Yes, his idea or the strategy that he laid out. I don't know how much he was a part of it, if he's just really just explaining it, but this is the first time it made sense in my ears. To me, I was just going to just vote against Kamala Harris out of protest, not even for any. I would have just stayed home or not voted at all, simply out of protest. Not because there's no way I can put my name behind an administration that's responsible for the deaths of probably 50,000 plus Muslims, maybe even more now. Who knows how many? Once the
Many more,
killing
bro. Many
stops,
more.
once they actually start digging things up. And anyway, that's going off topic. But now I see the plan, or I see the strategy is to try to build a bridge so that there's a third party in the United States that can offer an alternative to the duopoly of the Democrats and the Republicans, and that is with the Green Party, whether we agree with all their platforms or not. I don't agree with all their platforms, but the platform I do agree with is, of course, to stop funding Israel. And so that is the growth of the Green Party. And also the thing is that if the Green Party gets over 5% of the electorate, then they can apply for federal funding for their campaigns in the future. And so that is hopefully the plan. There's no one's under any illusion that the Green Party is going to win the presidential election. It will be between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and there's almost no way it can be anything else. So with that, however, I will say that CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, which is, of course, the largest civic and civil rights group in the United States for Muslims, ran a poll recently that showed Jill Stein had like 43%, Kamala Harris had about 41%, and Donald Trump had about 9%. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the race between Kamala Harris and Jill Stein amongst Muslims is so close. I don't get it, but evidently it is. I'm not surprised that Donald Trump is so low. That's not a surprise at all. But I'm really shocked. I thought it'd be something more like maybe 75-25 or 60-40 even. But for it to be 40-40 like that, and just a few points difference is really strange. But still, the way the U.S. electoral college is, she really needs to just lose 2 states. If she loses Michigan and maybe another state with a large population of Muslims like Georgia, it has a large population of Muslims. Georgia, the state that I live in right now, Atlanta is the capital of Georgia. Georgia has a fairly large population of Muslims in comparison to other states. Texas does as well, probably even more. But Georgia is a state that has been teetering between Republican and Democratic. It was Republican for the longest time, it went Democratic. I think for Joe Biden's election, it went Democratic, but now it's up in the air. And for the Democrats to win Georgia, they need Black people to be behind them, almost 100%, or at least historically. And then they also need Muslims. I don't know if they need Muslims. That's the thing. This will tell us. I don't know if they really need Muslims. I'll be honest. I don't know if the Muslim population is great enough, is large enough to cause this disruption. And that's what we're trying to find out. This is what will tell us, inshallah, if losing 42% of the Muslim vote will impact the Democratic Party enough where they can lose a couple of states. So that remains to be seen.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, to be honest with you, this is something that's happened in the UK. As you would have known, the general elections wasn't too long ago here. And what we had is, the main two parties are Conservatives and Labour.
Mhm.
And basically, the Muslims have historically, I don't know why, they've historically just voted Labour.
Right.
Um, and basically, when they saw what was happening in Gaza, and for example, the Labour politicians like Keir Starmer, who basically he said for the Zionists to starve and turn off the electricity and all these things to the people of Palestine, Gaza, it was self-defense. Obviously, this turned off a lot of people. So what happened was you had what they called the Muslim vote. So you had some independents who stood up in certain areas to kind of like disrupt, as you're saying, the whole election. But just on that point, um, I mean, there's loads to go into, but one thing I do want to mention, and I think it's difficult not to. I mean, my own position on the whole voting system and stuff like this, and you probably would have guessed is, I see it as something which is not allowed. I think we've discussed this before, so that's not going to change. But that's not the topic of this discussion. One thing I would say is the fact that even in the UK, when we had like 4 or 5 independents who won, um, it didn't change anything in the sense like even if people are going to talk about from a point of view of actual making any meaningful change, actually punishing the Labour Party, in
Mhm.
reality, it didn't make that much of a difference. It didn't make any difference, in all honesty. We see that what's going on in Gaza has been going on for 13, 14 months now, and it didn't change anything. So, I think with the issue to do with that Jill Stein and people who are talking about the disruption, because as you said, there's no chance she would become the next president. Um, I just think that there is a third option, and I think that option is not to be involved whatsoever because of two things. One is because of the Sharia point of view, which is what I believe is not allowed. But secondly, also, Brother Muttaqi, if you think about it, you have Trump, you have Kamala Harris, and if you think about their campaigning over the last, however months, in a way, a lot of their rhetoric has been when it comes to the issue of Palestine and the issue of what's happening there. It's who's going to be the biggest friend of Israel, right?
Right.
Who's going to be more loyal to them? So I think from a point of view of Muslims, whether it's in Gaza or even whether it's anywhere around the world, I think the reality is no matter who's in power, no matter which party's in power, the country, the deep state, they're going to act in the same way. They're going to continue their support and so on. So at the end of the day, I can see where people are saying, don't vote for the Democrats or don't vote for the Republicans and vote for Green Party. However, I think to be honest with you, yeah, I think what we need to do is actually question the whole entire system and the values of the West, which they promote so highly. However, what their true face has been exposed as to their support in Gaza. But I want to take a different route because obviously you're on the ground, you're an American Muslim. So I wanted to get an idea of, from a domestic point of view. I mean, we'll get onto Gaza and stuff like that, but from a domestic point of view, um, when you have these elections and when you have people come into power, how much difference does it actually make to people's day-to-day lives? From an American point of view, and secondly, from a Muslim point of view, because like you mentioned CARE earlier, I was reading a research that CARE did, and basically what they were saying is that just in 2023 there were over 8,000 complaints of hate crime against Muslims, and basically it's kind of like gone up 70% just in since October the 7th. So I guess there is a real issue on the ground in terms of the kind of Islamophobia people are experiencing. Now, maybe because of that, you said you were surprised that people voted for Kamala Harris, or they're going to in that poll you mentioned. Is that probably because they would feel more secure on an individual level rather than someone like Trump come on the scene who openly has said things like Islam hates us and the Muslim ban, and definitely there's a lot more far right rhetoric coming from him, and even his the vice president that what's his name, JP Vance or something,
Yeah.
yeah, JD Vance.
Mhm.
He said a lot of things which are really kind of like against Islam. But anyway, just to get a feel, bro, in the sense like after these elections, what difference do you actually feel on a day-to-day basis as an individual in America and as a Muslim in America?
As far as the presidential elections, most presidential policy at such a high level, we won't feel for sometimes several years. So it takes a while. It takes a while for things at such a high level to trickle down to impacting our daily life, because it takes a long time for it to become law and then for it to be applied. So it takes a while. So we really don't feel it immediately. I do always believe, and I've always believed this, that the nation tends to take on the characteristics of its leader. Um, Going all the way, I noticed it's going all the way back to Bill Clinton. With the nation, as far as the United States, I think this is with most countries as well, and most nations throughout history. When the leader is a certain way, the nation tends, or the majority of the population tends to follow that overall mode. Simple example.
Would you not sorry, brother Muttaqi, would you not say
Yeah,
it's the other way around in
that's
the
good.
sense like
Mm,
for example, just say in India, right? In India, we know what the BJP is about. We know what Modi is about, right? But he's winning landslide elections. And to me, that actually shows the feelings amongst the people who are voting this guy in, even though his rhetoric is such and such, right? So the leader is a kind of a reflection of the people. Would you say
mm.
that that's not kind of like too dissimilar to what you're saying?
I mean, I understand. I do believe also, yes, the leader would be a reflection of the people. However, I guess it's more or less in the way that reflection gets expressed, or how open that reflection is. It's hard for me to speak about India because I don't live there. I don't know how things were before Modi came into office. How I do remember hearing about violence against Muslims and riots against Muslims going back for decades. I remember hearing that for a while, but it's easier for me to do it from the American point of view because I was here and I lived through a lot of it. I will say what I mean by that is like when starting with Bill Clinton, when he became president, he was a fairly young president compared to the two or three men who came before him, especially George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan. President Clinton was fairly young. Since then, until Donald Trump, well, there were only two presidents after him, but the next couple of presidents also remained fairly young. And also, we all know about Bill Clinton's indiscretions. While it's not like America was a puritanical society before that, but many things after Bill Clinton became known as a, person who moved outside his marriage, so to speak, who did things outside of his marriage he wasn't supposed to. These things became more open. It was always happening. There's no doubt it was always happening, but it became more open. We started seeing, at least in my opinion, it seemed to be more common in popular media. The songs started becoming a little bit more rude after that. Popular culture tended to follow that mold.
Interesting. Interesting.
Um, when George Bush became president, George Bush Jr., when he became president, he was supposedly more Christian,
Mm.
more religious, but also more militaristic. People were openly Islamophobic back then, those first 4 or 5 years, especially after September 11th. But also, what many people don't remember is that much of the country voted against gay marriage during this period of time. Also, in the early 2000s, there were a couple of referendums throughout the United States where the people voted against gay marriage. Now, eventually it got passed through, especially when the next guy came in, Barack Obama, who was you know, Mr. Multicultural Love and Lollipops and everything. When he came on the scene, things changed also. Another thing about Obama, which is during his administration, which is, I guess it may have been actually better for Muslims, was because he did have a Muslim middle name and he did have somewhat of an Islamic background. the open attacks against Muslims and the open animosity against Muslims softened a lot during his administration. And we started seeing more Muslims getting more involved in the political arena. And we started seeing more television shows and more open depiction of Muslims in political life, not in political life, in popular life, in regular Muslim life, which I think is probably somewhat more represented than reality is. I don't. There's more representation of Muslims in popular media than probably really exists within the United States as a whole, except for the larger cities. So that was actually a fairly good thing. It kind of took a turn down when Trump came, and Biden, I don't know. Biden's a little bit. These last 4 years have been a bit of a blur during his administration. But the point is, if now we don't know, it's hard for as far as going forward with the next election. Regardless of who wins, I don't think much is going to change in Gaza. I agree with you on that one to a certain extent. To a certain extent. Thing is that Trump is not necessarily a friend of Muslims, but also he's more independent than other people. He is absolutely a Zionist. There's no doubt about that. But so is Kamala Harris. She's just as much a Zionist as he is, if not more. So I don't necessarily think things will change, but so much for the Palestinians. There is a matter of trying to send a message, letting the Democratic Party and all politicians know that the Muslim vote does matter, and not to take the Muslim vote for granted. That's one thing. That's part of the message as well. So it's not necessarily like, Kamala loses and Trump becomes president, all of a sudden Israel is going to change. I do think actually they are going to actually bring up a ceasefire after the election. I do believe Israel is going to do that. They're just waiting because I believe that Israel believes that Trump will be more lenient towards them.
That's exactly what's happening, bro. That's exactly there won't be one before the elections or the result.
No, yeah, not until Trump becomes president, and maybe even after, if he becomes president, and then after president sworn in. If he doesn't become president, if Kamala wins, then they'll have to take a different route. Me personally, I don't think Trump is actually going to give Israel the free hand that the Democrats have. People may be surprised to hear this, but Trump is actually a bit of a radical. He's not as beholden to the deep state as Kamala is. Trump is more of a wild card. That's the thing. He is more of a radical, and I would expect him to probably put more of the brakes on Israel than Kamala has, because Kamala wants to get reelected. Trump is not going to be reelected. This will be a second term, and that's it for him. He cannot be reelected again. So he doesn't have to play for a reelection. Kamala does. And if Kamala wants to be reelected, she has to pay into APAC. There's no doubt about that. And whereas Trump doesn't have that limitation. Trump, like I said, I don't think he's necessarily a friend of Muslims per se, but he also has a huge ego. And he has a big thing about his legacy. And he wants to be the one who finally solves the Middle East. Or he can use this against his Democratic opponents or his naysayers, saying that you guys let all this stuff happen, but look, I brought peace and stopped all the killing when I came in. So now once the shooting has stopped, he probably will let Israel do whatever they want there as far as rebuilding Gaza or reshaping Gaza in their image, which is what I think is ultimately what Netanyahu and the Israeli government wants to do. They want to reshape Gaza into whatever image they want it to be. Whatever plan, the crazy plan they have, we know it's nothing beneficial for the Palestinians. It's hard to really think that far ahead as far as what's best for the Palestinians, because first things first, you got to try to stop them from being killed. That's the main thing, is to stop them from being killed right now, and then think further on in the future. Ultimately, Allah is the best of planners. So no matter what we think we're going to do here, Allah is the best of planners, and whatever our plans and strategy may be, Allah could flip all this on the side and be something completely different. So I acknowledge that. But yeah, I do believe that if Trump wins, then Netanyahu will eventually, before he's sworn in, there'll be a ceasefire, and Trump will pretty much give Israel carte blanche to remake Gaza as they want, and he'll take credit for it, so forth and so on. Once it goes from there, we'll see though. But just because Israel stops shooting or stops dropping bombs on Gaza does not mean the situation is over. not by any means. There's still Iran, there's still Lebanon, there's still Yemen, there's still other things happening. There's still the friction between the United States and Saudi Arabia. There's still the millions, perhaps, of refugees, Gazan refugees have to be considered. Too often, people don't think more than 3 or 4 months in the future. Just because Israel calls a ceasefire does not mean it's over. There, who knows what's going to happen after that? So,
Yeah, 100%, bro. I mean, the thing is from a the situation, it gets to a stage where it's so bad that people think a ceasefire is a solution because ultimately they just want the killing to stop. But in reality, from a if you were looking from a religious point of view, if you were looking at even from just a rational point of view, a ceasefire basically doesn't put out the fire, okay? And they will start it whenever they want. The reality is, you know, the people in Gaza, they're doing their bit, when it comes to defending the land, and stopping, the Zionists from taking all of Palestine. They're doing their bit. But the rest of the Ummah obviously requires, there needs to be more action from the Ummah. But, at the end of the day, from a Muslim point of view, what we want is, we want the issue to be resolved, um, and how it was before. I mean, it's ironic today is the 2nd of November. It's, the Balfour Declaration was, signed, I think, 2nd of November, 1917. So, we want a situation which is, pre 1917. That's what we aspire to. Um, but at the end of the day, like you said, bro, whoever comes into power, the point is from America's, point of view, it's for strategic reasons why it supports the Zionist state. It's purely from a strategic point of view. And we've discussed this before as well. That's why they, describe the they describe Israel as the aircraft carrier, the US aircraft carrier in the region. And that's why they are supporting it, because ultimately it has no real lifespan. And actually, I was thinking about this, brother Muttaqi, and obviously, I know you will enjoy this bit because you are all about your history. But I was thinking about this, how if you think about uh, October the 7th, and as soon as everything kicked off, what you see is since then up until today, the Americans, they set up the air bridge. They sent over 50,000 tons of explosives. They've sent over all sorts of stuff. Between them and the UK and the European countries who have supported the Zionist state, they have been doing all the reconnaissance for them. They've been telling them all the targets. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if this little entity was left to itself, then it wouldn't last. That's the reality. And what I was thinking about is you look at the Crusader kingdoms. And if you look at the Crusader kingdoms and you see why some of the most important um, parts of the Crusader kingdoms were where the ports were, like places like Tyre, as an example. Because if
yeah.
you look at the Crusader kingdoms, their lifeline was Europe, in the sense like they were getting supplied from there, whether it was grain, whether it was soldiers. So there was always a trickle of support coming in from Europe, from Christian Europe, in order to keep these entities, this foreign entity alive, because that's what it was. It was foreign and it was in a hostile and alien land. It needed this external support. And if you think about it, after the Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, and even after his brother, and then when the Mamluks came into power, when port cities like Tyre fell, ultimately the Crusader kingdoms disappeared because that support that this foreign entity needed from abroad was no longer there. So, in that same way, when you're looking at how the West has come to aid this entity, is because it's in their benefit. They see this as a civilizational issue. The Europeans have mentioned it, the Americans have talked about it, Netanyahu keeps going on about it, how they are the last line of defense somehow if Israel falls, then the rest of Europe is going to get taken over by the Islamists and the extremist Muslims. But that support that comes from the West, it's the lifeline. So ultimately, whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's Donald J. Trump, it's the deep state that decides. Now, with Donald Trump and linking it to what you're saying, and I think this is the reason why he's had, two, if not more, assassination attempts, is because he is a maverick. He is someone who has gone up against the deep state like no one has before, right? And I think ultimately, if he doesn't come into power, I think it's because the deep state have kept him out, right? Um, but nevertheless, I think, ultimately this issue is going to continue because of the support and because of the strategic, the strategic importance Israel has to the Americans. And that's ultimately the point, bro. So a ceasefire here, a ceasefire there. Unfortunately, if there's not a radical change, then I think it's going to continue as it is.
When you say the issue, are you talking about just the occupation apartheid state of Israel?
Yeah,
And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
okay, yeah.
You
Well, yeah,
know.
that's not going to change simply because we get a new president in the United States. That's not going to change. I don't expect that to change, but I have to when I all the studies I've done on these different conflicts, when and I know is and I know I just spoke about thinking about 3 or 4 months ahead, but it's really hard to think further ahead when you have so many people dying at such a high rate on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So ultimately, even with like an example was wasn't really a civil war, but the fighting between Saudi Arabia and Yemen about 5, 6 years ago that went on for so long. Ultimately, regardless of who is right or who is wrong, whether you think the Houthis are proper Muslims or not, or whether they're true or rightful government or not. Even similar thing with Sudan, whether you think I forgot the different acronyms, but whether the Sudanese army or the rebel army or whoever
The
is fighting,
RSF.
yeah, RSF, whichever side you think is right or wrong, who they're being backed by, whether proxies of this one or that one. For from I guess this is just me speaking. I guess my personal opinion is first let's get the killing to stop, and then so when it came to the Houthis, I was like, Saudi Arabia, just recognize the Houthis as a legitimate government, be done with it. Bombing them for all these reasons is not doing anything but killing more innocent Muslims. And just stop the killing, first of all. Hold your nose and deal with the Houthis as they are and just be done with it. With Sudan, I mean, I don't know the situation as well as I knew the situation with Yemen because I deliberately when I did a deep dive into Yemen and how the Houthis came to power. Sudan hasn't been resolved yet, so there is it's still going, it's still going on. But the same thing, the government's not going to step aside. It was just want, first of all, to stop Muslim deaths. That's the first and foremost. The same with Israel. Of course, we don't like the current situation. We don't like the occupation and the apartheid state that Israel is. We don't want all that. And it's hard to really think much further beyond just to get the killing to stop. At some point in time, I mean, I guess that's the first thing. I hate to say I don't like the fact I'm getting desensitized to seeing dead babies. I mean, that's really a reality I have to accept now that I'm starting to get desensitized to seeing dead Muslim children because I've seen this so much. So I don't think necessarily getting a ceasefire, as I mentioned, getting a ceasefire doesn't end the situation. Getting a ceasefire just momentarily, I do know this momentarily, it will momentarily, get to a point where Israel is not just, raining tons and tons of bombs on Gazans and now Lebanese and maybe Iranians too now, over and over and over again. And then from there, who knows what the next strategy will be at that point in time. But I understand, I agree with you that it's not going to end the situation. Who knows what's going to be after that? I hesitate to think too far ahead because I do remember, after the Taliban fell in 2001, 2002, everyone was, oh, we're going to remake Afghanistan to the current state. 20 years later, Afghanistan is so different. So I've seen too many things change on a dime, just within my lifetime, and even more so speaking of, researching history. It's not over yet. Just right now, just want Muslims not being killed by the truckloads or by the boatload as they are right now.
Yeah. No,
Just
I
because they
agree
have a
with you.
ceasefire, Hamas is not going to stop fighting. They will continue fighting.
They have
Hezbollah
to.
will still continue fighting. The
Yeah.
Houthis, what little they can do from Yemen, that's going to continue. And what
Yeah.
else?
I mean, the
Yeah.
reality is, bro, the Zionists, they are cowards, really, because, even if you look at the attacks that the Hezbollah is doing, and you look at what Hamas are doing, they're targeting the military. And I
Mhm.
think here their strategy is basically you can't defeat some ragtag mob. Even though the superpower of the world is supporting you, not just militarily but politically and through intelligence and all, you can't. So you just bomb the people to bits and just basically break the will. Similar to if you think about when the Italians were in Libya and you had Omar Mukhtar basically, and they were getting a bit of a beating from the resistance. So what they did was they basically moved majority, if not all, the population into these concentration camps, which cut off the support of the Mujahideen, but then also put the Mujahideen in a situation where they have to choose between their people suffering or them giving themselves up and putting down their guns. So this is not really, it's not really how men fight, you know, and they don't really care. And the thing you said about the desensitization, bro, that is really sad because what I would say about that, bro, is, and this is bad where, like now, if you open up Al Jazeera, for example, that's my sort of go-to website at the moment to for on issue the on your news about Gaza and so on. And it's like daily you'll say 130 people killed in North Gaza because obviously North Gaza under siege. They've cut off water, food. Basically they're trying to ethnically cleanse the place. The people didn't want to leave, so now they're starving them, and then they're killing them when they do finally want to leave. So the point I'm saying is that it's like 130, okay, but 130 people is a lot of people. But because it's been over 40 something thousand, and actually there are reports where it's closer to 150,000, 200,000, right? You would have come across those. It kind of desensitizes you where it's 100. Do you know what I mean? Whilst
Yeah.
100 is is a huge number. And that's the sad thing. And the reality is it just goes to show uh, the value of Palestinian or Muslim blood compared to, for example, the issue with Ukraine. How the US has supported the Ukrainians. And to be honest with you, that's another thing which I think if Trump comes into power, I think things are going to change a little in
Yeah.
terms of, like, I doubt Zelensky wants Trump to come into power because this guy's like a maverick businessman. You know what I mean? He ain't gonna give
Yeah.
nothing for free, right?
Mhm.
And right now they've just been signing off billions and billions and billions. Obviously, they've got their own goals. However, Trump works a bit different, and he's already said, hasn't he, that I'll resolve the issue with Putin fairly quickly.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of interesting. But one question I want to ask you, bro, is in terms of like your interactions with other Muslims and I would say even just normal Americans. In terms of people who are now going to vote for Trump because the fact that they want to get back at the Democrats.
Mhm.
I mean, that is, to me, that's purely reactionary in the sense, like you said, just say you were going to vote, right? Just say you were going to vote. Then, the third option, which is the Green Party, is probably your safest safest. If you want to take some sort of revenge, you might do that. But what I just don't understand is, how Muslims would be voting for Trump. Even I heard, even within the Hispanic men, within the black men populations,
Yeah.
they are predominantly voting for Trump, even though this guy is known to be racist, whether that's true or not. He's known to have Islamophobic ideas. He's known to have many, kind of like extreme views. The people he surrounded himself with, whether it's that JD Vance or whether it's that guy before, I can't remember his name. I think he was a writer or the founder of Breitbart. Um, he just came out of prison. So
Yeah. I can't remember his
what
name. I know.
what's going on there? What's the thinking behind people who would vote for Trump? And especially Muslims, it doesn't make sense.
All right. The one Muslim that I know that has somewhat of a high profile who acknowledged supporting Trump was, I think, the mayor of Hamtramck, which is a city in Michigan, has a very large
Are,
Muslim
are
population.
these the guys who came on stage?
I don't know if they came on stage or not. I didn't
There,
watch
there
them.
was a rally. There was a rally where basically there was loads of these imams and Arabs, and they came on stage and they basically said,
It could be.
"We're voting Trump because Trump wants peace." That's what they
Right.
say.
The thing is that the city council of Hamtramck made news about 2 years ago, um, maybe about a year, roughly 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, where they passed a law banning the display of any flags except for U.S. flags, state flag, and
Israeli flag?
no, the MI, the military flag, MIA, POW MIA, prisoners of war MIA flag on government property. And this was a backdoor route to banning the rainbow flag. So
Ah, okay.
they passed that law to prevent the rainbow flag from being flown on government buildings. Doesn't ban it from people's private property. You can still do it. And they received so much backlash from the liberal left on because of that one, because they did that. Now, anyway, but the point is that it is a Muslim city council, or predominantly Muslim city council, at least I believe a Muslim mayor as well. So they know, at least from that perspective, considering their track record there, and people forget about that when they talk about him supporting Trump. They forget about that part of it. We also got to acknowledge, even with the Green Party, and even I got to admit this and acknowledge that the Democratic Party, both parties are corrupt. But the Democratic Party, outwardly and aggressively promotes immoral and un-Islamic behavior. So that alone should be enough for Muslims not to support them. Even if you can't stand Trump, I'm not saying vote for any other party. And the Green Party, I'll acknowledge, is they're kind of on that same liberal road too. That's one of the things I
100%, bro.
noticed.
And that was my point as well. That was my point. They're going to be promoting loads of nonsense.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be as bad as the Democrats, but once again, they're not going to get power. So they're not going to win the election. So they can't. But I do understand that platform is pretty much liberal. It's just more radical liberal. I won't say more radical. It is a non-mainstream liberal than the Democratic Party. Democrats is a corporate liberal party, whereas the Green Party is a non-corporate, non-mainstream liberal party. I don't think they're any more radical than the Democrats are, quite frankly, but neither here nor there. The point of the matter is, I'm going back to the Muslims who may support Trump. It's the same thing I think that I mentioned before, is that almost certainly Trump is going to, even if Israel doesn't do it, I believe Trump will force Israel to at least do a ceasefire. He's going to force him to do that, which is the first, which for many Muslims, unfortunately, is the first thing. I don't say unfortunately, it's the first thing on our mind because it's hard for me to think otherwise. Also, to get the killing to stop. I do think he's going to do that more so than the Democrats will, more so than Kamala Harris will, because if they could have done it, or they wanted to do it, they could have done it already. And so
Yeah.
we know the thing is, we know we're going to get with Kamala Harris and Democrats because we've been through the past 4 years of it. Now, as far as the whole Trump being a racist and all, I mean, from my perspective, of me being as a Black American and as a Muslim as well, Trump is not the first racist president we've had. We've had quite a few of them.
Yeah,
So
true. Yeah.
this is kind of par for the course here. So he's not going to bring back slavery. He's not going to bring back Jim Crow. There's all those things are just scary things people tried. I see a lot of the same tricks that I've seen what happened with the black community trying to be pulled on the Muslim community. These scare tactics of Trump is going to do this and he's going to do that. He's going to, all sorts of crazy things. Stop it. He was president before. Not much really changed as far as from Obama, as far as Obama's presidency to Trump's presidency. It was just about the same. All these things, all the scare tactics, we need to get over this. Vote who you want to vote for, or don't vote if you don't want to vote. I'm not saying, but don't fall for these silly, scare tactics. If you really do believe in the Democratic platform, then that's what you can vote. That's what you can vote for. If you believe in the Republican platform, then vote for that. No American owes their loyalty to anyone else, to any one of these parties, because they are corporate parties. Vote for who you want to vote for, and don't fall for that foolishness. Now, as far as Black men specifically moving towards Trump, it's much of the same thing. For many Black people, especially Black men, there is a deep disgust and hatred. I won't say hatred, that might be too strong, but deep disgust and disillusionment with the Democratic Party. I see that with a lot of Black men specifically. Men are generally more conservative than women. And I don't want to say men are more logical than women. I don't want to say that, but men tend to look at things from a numbers and a perspective of let's put things in order. Let's look at things like this and see how they turned out. And Black people have supported the Democratic Party for decades, and decades, going back to the Martin Luther King days. Longer than I've been alive, well over 50 years, Black people have generally supported the Democratic Party, and it hasn't gotten us much of anything, right? Really, the few advances that have been made by people in the streets getting their head bashed in and getting fire hose and having dogs sicked on them and everything, by people in the streets actually protesting and forcing the government to make changes, but not necessarily because a certain president comes into power and signs bills that change everything. No, these things had to be fought for with blood, sweat, and tears. So not because of any particular party. And so I really don't see any reason to holding loyalty to the Democratic Party. And it's still a minority. There are a lot of Black men who just like, I'm just going to vote for who I think is best. I don't owe any loyalty to this party or anything. If Trump is talking about improving the economy, then he gets my vote, and that's it. And for a lot of people, talk about non-Muslims now. For a lot of non-Muslim Americans, the economy is the first thing.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
I mean, that's the main thing. Inflation is bad. The dollar's not going as far as it used to go. Jobs are plentiful jobs out there, but they're pretty trashy jobs, or many of them are not paying what they should pay. That's that perception, at least. The illegal immigration that might be made bigger than what it really is, because it really is only affecting a few cities, but it is an issue in those few cities. Cities are common Democratic strongholds: Chicago, New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles to a certain extent, but definitely those first three. I encourage you, go and look at some of the videos on some of these cities and look at it's hard to tell the difference between some of these cities and the poor areas or in the Skid Row areas. Compare them. They look like third world countries with people drugged out and sleeping in tents.
Yeah. I've seen that, bro. People walking around like zombies, man.
It's horrible. And these are democratic cities or democratically run cities, and they look terrible. They have these, the immigration thing as far as massive immigrants coming in, some of that is really blown up bigger than what it is. But still, the perception is there that you have these illegal immigrants coming in, and the government's
they're eating the cats and dogs of people.
No, that's just one more rumor being put out. But the main thing is that they're coming here and they are getting government benefits that could go to Americans. That's
the same thing wherever, man. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
here.
They say that all the time. I get it, but they're being put up in hotels, they get benefits that could go to Americans, so forth. They're taking jobs from Americans. I think that's, like I said, I do believe those things are dramatized more than they really are, but the perception is still there. And the perception is that if Trump comes in, he's going to stop all that, continue with his wall building on the Mexico border and all that kind of stuff. That's foolishness. He's not going to do all that. And even if that's silliness, that's political talk. But that's the main thing. I think there are a certain section of black men, and I'm familiar with a lot of them who just can't stand the Democratic Party. I can't say I'm one of them, but I really can't stand the Democratic Party. I really don't like them either. The Republicans, I really don't care one way or the other. But the Democratic Party, for some reason, it seems as if they've done a bait and switch on us for too long, and I'm really kind of done with them also.
Yeah.
I don't really hold any expectations from them. It'll take a lot for me to vote for them ever. I'd rather just sit home and just watch baseball or something like that, rather than go out and vote for them.
And that's the best option, bro. But in terms of we just spoke about Muslims there, right? But in terms of non-Muslims, because when we saw the campus protests,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about this a little while ago, and I was thinking, how in the past when you had these European colonialists who went out and were colonizing lands in Africa and in Asia and all sorts, right? And the sort of horror that they put the people through. And I was thinking that actually at that time, maybe the people at home in Britain or in Belgium, wherever, France, maybe they weren't exposed to the crimes that were being committed in their name, right?
Right.
So you could probably give them a pass on that, right? But in terms of now, where you have a genocide being played live on TV, where basically it's well known that the bombs that are being dropped on the Palestinians and now the Lebanese are American bombs, right?
Mhm.
So for the normal person, he can't now claim ignorance, in my opinion. You understand what I'm trying to say? It's like
Yeah.
this is now happening. It's happening in your name, right? So what are you doing about it, right? And that's why we saw in the campus protests, and we saw even in the UK, for example, we saw many of the pro-Palestinian protests. They weren't actually organized mainly by Muslims. A lot of it, and if not most of it, was done by non-Muslims, right? So in that respect, do you think that this will also then have like a result in less people voting for the Democrats, or less people actually even voting at all in the system, which they're now seeing as a hypocritical system? And now they're seeing that, all this talk about democracy and pluralism and human rights and international law and international community is nothing but a farce, that many people will just not actually get involved in the system any longer and actually work to expose it and try to change it or improve it.
Yeah, there's two things I want to mention. First is that when I mentioned earlier that a ceasefire will not end it, is that in addition to just stopping the killing, is the fact that so many more Americans and people all around the world, quite frankly, have been exposed to what's happening in Israel and Palestine now. They are exposed to it, they understand it, and there are many non-Muslims who feel just as passionately about what's happening in Palestine as Muslims do. Just as passionate. They may not be Muslim, they may not accept Islam, they may not believe in what Islam promotes and what Islam represents, but they feel very passionately about the destruction and the killing and the violence and the injustice done against the Palestinian people. Some of them are more like two-state solutions, some are one-state solutions, some are like get rid of Israel completely. Yeah, there's a spectrum of people who are against Israel, and it has not been like, it has never, ever been like this
Mm,
in the United States, and I believe throughout much of the world now. The emperor has no clothes now. Israel
Alhamdulillah.
has been fully exposed, and even though there will still be a significant number of people, and this is what I'll talk about in just a moment, who will still, as Americans, who will still support Israel no matter what, either because of propaganda, because they just don't like Muslims, whatever the case may be. They will still support Israel. There will still be a good number of people who will do that. Those numbers are coming down dramatically. They're
Alhamdulillah.
coming down dramatically, and the number of people who will at least see Israel as more of a villain. They don't no longer see Israel as a hero. I think that has raised it. Even for those people who are diehard Democrats, who will vote blue no matter who. Even for those people, they will say, I don't like the genocide, I don't like what's happening in Israel, but Donald Trump is worse. That's their thing. That's many of them who will say that. There'll be very few, there are Zionist Democrats, obviously, as well, who support the Zionist cause no matter what.
But even
But
even Mehdi Hassan was saying something similar.
yeah, he's the one who supports Kamala Harris as well, even though he's Arab himself and he's Muslim as well, even though he's a very liberal
He's not
Muslim.
Arab. He's from India.
He's Indian. Okay, I thought he was Arab all this time. Okay, my bad. But he's Muslim. Why do you say he's Palestinian? Anyway, there's a conversation he was having with Mark Lamont Hill. I thought he said he was Arab, but either way, the point is that he still is Muslim, but he's kind of a liberal one,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. But the fact is that he is supporting Kamala Harris, which I get it. I don't agree with it, but I understand why he will go that route. But there's still that era of Americans either being wholly ignorant or accepting of it is over. That's not going to come back, inshallah. I don't think that will ever come back again. And it will only increase. It'll only
Alhamdulillah.
continue. And eventually, these people who are 20 and 25 years old now, they'll eventually become 40 and 50 years old at some point, inshallah, in the future. And they will have more money and more say in politics. And the teenagers who are seeing this stuff now, they're going to carry this on with them as they get older. And so in time, that's why I say it's not over yet, just a ceasefire doesn't change things. I don't think in the future, Israel will enjoy as much unquestioned support as it does now. It may go up and down, Allah knows best how it's going to go, but I don't think it's going to enjoy as much unquestioned white card or carte blanche support as it has so far up till now. That era is over. Now, who knows how they will react, whether AIPAC is going to change its tactics or not, or who knows what's going to happen with that. But those days are over. Now, on the other side, I did want to mention that there are still many Americans who do support Israel. And this is my own personal reflection. And I mentioned it on one of your earlier conversations that even I have people within my family who defend Israel. And these are non-Muslims within my family, not the Muslims within my family. Somebody was Muslim, defend Israel, that'll be corrected very quickly between. But I do have non-Muslim within my family. My parents converted to Islam, so I have siblings who were born before my father converted, and my father had family members who never accepted Islam. And so, in conversation, they're all older than me, and I'm an old man, and they're older than me. So these are old school Black Democrats who will vote blue no matter who. They've been raised in that. But this is one thing I believe that the Democratic Party has infiltrated the Black church, which is one of the strongest institutions, the most popular institutions within the Black community, and is also predominantly women as well. Black men are leaving the Black church, not leaving Christianity per se, but leaving the Black church in droves. There's a common one, I'm not getting off track, I'll get back on in a moment. There's a common, I won't say it's a phrase but you compare the Black church or the church in general in the United States versus the masjid per se. When you go to the church, it's mostly women. When you go to the masjid, it's mostly men. That's for two different reasons. In the church, it's mostly women because men are leaving, and Black men as well are leaving the church. Again, not leaving Christianity per se. They may still be, nominally Christian, but they are leaving the participation within the Black church a lot, in droves, really. Within of course, the Muslim community, the reason why there's more men, because generally women can't attend the masjid they legally can't, Islamically legally, can't attend the masjid at certain points of time. And also women it's okay for women to stay home, whereas men have to go to the masjid if they have the ability to do so. So it's a different reason. It's not like women are leaving Islam or in disillusion with the masjid. For Islamic reason, they just can't go as often as men can go. but still, that's the thing. And that's a common refrain. You'll see this within the Black community as well, is that churches are now predominantly women, older women at that, not even
Yeah,
young
yeah.
women, mostly older women. So, but my point is, as far as the Democratic Party, I believe that they're infiltrating the Black churches. That twice now, I've had two members from my family, both non-Muslim, defend Israel. One was a very staunch defense of Israel, and she's a church woman, talking about how the Hamas or the Palestinians, they committed terrorist acts against Israel and they're only getting what they deserve, so forth and so on. And I don't see how someone can talk about Jesus Christ and the blood of Christ and peace and the Prince of Peace and all these sort of things and talking about kill them all and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff, because she's not someone who's very familiar with the situation. I know her. She's not someone who knows the history of Israel and the history of Palestine and the struggle. They don't know that. Everything they're getting is either from the news, and she's not listening to Fox News. She's going to listen to MSNBC or CNN, or she's going to get it from her pastor, from the church. So my guess is that's coming a combination of the news and the church. Another family member of mine, I think she's like my aunt on my father's side. She was a little more conciliatory, but still said something along the lines of, God said he would protect his people, meaning the Jews. So this was all written. And my response was not a good response. I could have probably responded in a more mature manner, but my response was very, it hasn't really been the same between us since then,
Okay.
between me and those family members since then. But the point of the matter is that, again, she's an older woman who goes to the church. Only way she's getting this stuff is from the church. She's
That's
not sitting
interesting.
there doing a deep analysis or deep dive research into the history of the conflict of the occupation and the apartheid state of Israel. She hasn't done all that. She's getting it from the news, mainstream media, and I believe from the church. The fact that she's putting God into it tells me that it's coming from the church and not from the news media, because the news media
Mm.
doesn't do that sort of thing. They'll talk about political reasons for it. I believe the Democratic Party is infiltrating the Black church, and the Black church is just parroting these things to keep Black people in line. Those who are still attending church, keep them in line, and not be so against Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party per se. This is my conspiracy theory. I'm gonna stick to it until somebody proves me wrong. So,
Subhanallah, bro. No, that is really interesting. That's really interesting. And it kind of makes sense, to be honest with you, because I was thinking that even though there will be a shift in um, many people and the majority of the people, especially young people, like you mentioned, the thing is if you look at the origins of Zionism, it was first Christian Zionism and then it became Jewish Zionism when they found the right people to go and achieve what they wanted them to do in the promised land, right? So if people are doing it for like a religious reason, to bring back the Messiah for the end of times, then to be honest with you, whether 1 million people die, 2 million people die, that's part of God's plan. So I can't see those people, like you're saying, changing their mind. But it's really good to know, Alhamdulillah, like you said, the emperor with no clothes. And that's what we're seeing now. And that's why, in all honesty, I think Gaza, we've called it the Al Furqan from the start, where it's a differentiator between people. And obviously you have the people on the truth, you have the people on the falsehood. Even within the Muslims, you have those who have made a stand for what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza, whilst others have continued their day-to-day life. But what I would say, to be honest with you, is I think one of the big differentiations is between those people with a conscience, regardless of what your faith is and what your background is, and those people who are dead from inside. And the people who can excuse the death or the murder, shall we say, of thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of children, of women, and of just civilians, you know, they have to be dead from inside, bro, because you know your humanity shouldn't allow you to do this. So yeah, Alhamdulillah, bro. But so I think the ultimate question then, bro, before we bring the podcast to a close, is to put you on the hot seat.
okay.
Who's gonna win? What's gonna happen, brother Muttaqi, according to you?
I think with the Democratic Party losing losing a good chunk of Black men and Hispanic men, and also losing roughly half the Muslim vote, where they probably enjoyed nearly 80 to 90% of the Muslim vote before. I think Donald Trump is probably going to win, not by much. Now, again, the Electoral College kind of changes things around, but I know before I mentioned that I kind of hinted that Kamala might win, and at that time, with her being such a shift from Joe Biden, it was such a shift that she hadn't really done any interviews yet, and she hasn't really, I'm not saying she's a smart woman. I'm sure she's very intelligent. I'm sure she knows her politics, but her presentation is somewhat off.
Mm.
And she doesn't have the charisma that Obama had. She doesn't have the swagger and the just pompous ego that Donald Trump has. Is kind of, I don't know. There's a perception, for better or for worse, that she's a bit of a faker. And
But do you think Americans would vote a woman to be their leader?
I don't think that's really the issue, because I think Hillary Clinton had more popular votes than Donald Trump had. The Electoral College just kind of nullifies that. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think that would really yeah, I think they would. I don't think that's much. There are some people who will never vote for women, of course, at all. There are some people who will do that. I don't think it's a significant amount, though. I mean, Great Britain has had at least two female prime ministers.
yeah. But I
And
thought in America you got a mix where she's a woman, on top of that she's colored. So I was thinking for
yeah,
maybe in the South she
mm.
wouldn't be too popular. But
Yeah, I think there's enough people who really don't care who would still vote over. I just go by Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. She would have probably beat Donald Trump. But I think though the same people who just didn't like Donald Trump before, those are the same people. And there are some people who may have supported Donald Trump back in 2016 who won't support him now. I don't think that number is greater than the number of people who are not going to vote for the Democrats or just won't vote for Kamala Harris, period.
right,
Um, but the real matter is, however, flipping states. That's what really matters. The number of people the popular vote matters to a certain extent, but not much. What
yeah,
really matters is flipping individual states, whether they're Democratic or not, or whether they voted for Biden in the last election, voted for Trump in the previous election, getting them to flip over to either stay or flip over to
yeah,
the other side. That's where it really comes down to. So that's why Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, a few of these other states that aren't diehard red or blue states, or Democratic Republican states, getting those to flip over. That's what it really comes to. So if Michigan, again, if the Muslims of Michigan don't come out for Kamala, and if they really do make up that significant of a block, then the Democrats will lose Michigan, and it'll be very difficult for them to win after that. Georgia's a
mm,
different case. Georgia can go either way. I still think Georgia it's a southern state, mostly outside of the Atlanta metro area. It's uh, very conservative outside the Atlanta metro area, maybe a few other spots here and there. But if enough counties can flip for, or not really flip for Trump, just don't support Kamala Harris, then it can go to
yeah,
Trump. Then he can get Georgia too. And at that point, they might come to Pennsylvania as the last one. After that, I don't think the Democrats will win after that.
yeah. No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. It's about the swing states, isn't it? Really, and
Yeah.
ultimately, bro. Like I said, I also think the deep state have an important, role to play. I always feel like, um, the right man for the job normally wins the election in terms of, you know, what the next term requires from the strategic point of view. So, as an example, when Obama won, this was at a time where I felt like the America wanted to repair some of its image, especially in the Muslim lands, because of what happened. So you got a guy whose middle name is Hussein comes on the scene. As soon as he's elected, one of the first places he goes is Egypt, and this is all kind of unheard of. So I think even when Trump came into power the first time, at that time from an economic point of view, I think he did well in terms of, like, they brought a businessman like person in, the way he pressurized the European countries to start paying into NATO and so on and so forth, and the deals that he made with the Saudis by selling them, you know, making these contracts where they were paying him billions and billions of dollars, and obviously this was improving the work, the employment back home in the States. So it depends really what the next step is in terms of what the vision is. But yeah, to be honest with you, I thought Trump was going to win it anyway. Even if Kamala Harris wasn't there and it was just Biden,
I even said
um,
what Biden.
you
There's
know,
no way
uh,
Biden.
yeah, exactly. And I just thought Trump, even though to be honest with you, we talk about how Kamala Harris, when you listen to her, she's not all there, and Joe Biden was just a joke. However, if you actually listen to Donald Trump, he speaks a lot of nonsense as well, right?
Yeah.
He repeats
Yeah.
himself. He's not eloquent, but at the end of the day, if it's between him and Kamala Harris, I think people are gonna go for that. But bro, inshallah, Jazakallah khair to get your thoughts on the elections, and we'll have to just wait and see what happens, man. But before we end, just want to get your final thoughts on the episode, or even just maybe tell us a bit about the work you've been doing, and plug
Yeah.
your uh, plug your podcast in a little, as I would say.
All right. Well, I'm trying to get more into video. So as far as the podcast is concerned, the audio portion, I'm still going to complete the history of the Mughals, which ends. I'm hoping to have it available by the end of the year, discussing the last part of the Mughal dynasty, the last 100 years or so. It's really tough to get through because the Mughal Empire is falling apart, and there's so many different players coming in. It's hard to keep track of all. And the Mughal emperors are just complete trash for the most part right now. After Aurangzeb, I think I can't remember the one who came after him. Aurangzeb and not Jahangir. One who came Shah Jahan. I can't remember. Anyway, the one who came after Aurangzeb, his son. After that one, it's just a complete
Hmm. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
complete circus in the Mughal Empire after that. One bad emperor after the other. You start getting these micro states breaking off from the Mughals, the Hyderabad state, the Awadh state, Kerala. Um, all these different states are just breaking off from the Mughal Empire. You get the rise of Afghanistan under Ahmed Shah Durrani coming
Mm.
through. And also the British and the French are coming in now, slowly grabbing up Bengal and really becoming influential. You have the Marathas. Bro, it's so many different pieces trying to keep up with this. So
Yeah.
it's holding me back trying to just make sure I tell a coherent story,
Mm.
trying to cover these last 100 years or so of the Mughal Empire, roughly 150 years, up until I believe the mutiny, and it wasn't really a mutiny, but they could so called it mutiny because but it was really I would consider more of an uprising
Yeah,
in
yeah.
1840 or so, 1820 or so,
1857.
1857.
Yep.
Okay, and when the last Mughal emperor was deposed, and
Mm.
how the British pretty much crushed Delhi and killed so many people, and
Yeah.
it's a lot to go. It's a lot to get through. So that's what's holding me up to really getting through that research because there's so much going on. In addition to that, I'm trying to move more into video. And so uh, it requires consistent creating consistent videos on a regular basis. And you know, all that time spent is just slowing down the audio podcast and the Mughal history. But as far as the video is concerned, I am trying to branch a little bit more off from just straight history and trying to do more of a I don't want to say my thoughts on things, but yeah, just things
Yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
I'm interested in. So where I'm
Yeah, yeah.
talking about I'm trying to talk more about history as far Black American Muslim history. I'm trying to talk, as you mentioned earlier, I'm trying to get more into that while still covering the same thing. Everything I'm covering, I'm still going to talk about the Mughals and the Crusades and things like that. But I do want to talk more about Black American Muslim history as well and get that a little bit more on the forefront. And doing more interviews, those it takes time to get those, so we'll see how that goes through. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Right, trying to
Alhamdulillah.
build the video side while completing the Mughal history. Once the Mughal history is complete, I'm going to complete, inshallah, or get back on track with just wrapping up the Khilafat. By that I mean wrapping up the transition between the Umayyad Khilafat to the Abbasid Khilafat, while also discussing the formation of Al-Andalus and how that eventually became its own state or separate from the Abbasids after the Umayyads were overthrown. So that's going to happen after the Mughals are complete. I'm going to really just discuss the Umayyads and the transition into the Abbasids, and that should take me well into 2027, inshallah, if Allah gives me that enough life.
I
That's going to
mean,
take
I mean,
it's going to take a while to get through that transition.
mashallah. No, that sounds really positive, bro. Sounds really positive. And as usual, I'll add the links to the to the video description. But yeah, bro, Jazakallah khair. It's been a
Yeah,
really good opportunity to catch up with you. And
alhamdulillah.
I think we should do this a bit more regularly. I know we always plan to, but something else comes up, and bro,
Life
with
keeps
the
life.
yeah. And to
Life
be honest
keeps
with
life.
you, with the amount of things you're saying you're juggling at the moment, I think
Yeah.
it's difficult to ask you of your time. But inshallah, I'm sure we can get
Whenever you
together.
can, inshallah. Whenever you need me, just let me know. We'll make some time, inshallah. We'll try to make it work somehow or another. Just let me know.
Inshallah, bro. Inshallah. So yeah, and to everyone else listening, watching, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And we'll see what happens in the election in the next few days. At the end of the day, we are talking about the only superpower in the world. So anything that happens there, the tremors are felt globally because their tentacles, unfortunately, are found everywhere. And
Yeah.
then we can't do much about that currently. But inshallah, and please share this episode with your family and friends, and definitely check out the Islamic History Podcast. I'll share the links, and there are many, many different series that Brother Muttaqi has recorded. And I always say this, whether it's from the Sira point of view or the stories about some of the Sahaba, even the story about Karbala, and you've got the Mughals and the Ottomans, and plenty of content. Definitely check it out, inshallah. Um, Once again, brother Mutaki, Jazakallah khair. And to everyone else at home, until the next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.